Hello everyone, Jason here with VC Edge. I got my new spindle nose closure from Tormach. The thing that was causing some problems with my mill, causing the spindle to momentarily lock up or almost permanently lock up. This one should have more clearance. So I'm going to take the old one off, I'm going to measure it, compare it to this one, see what the differences are, and reinstall this. Also, after I get this installed, I'm going to finish up the machining on the Tombstone, get the faces all machined down, and drill and tap the holes for the pallets that are going to go on it. Alright, so let's check out the new spindle nose closure. So I just want to measure this bore, this internal diameter. So I'm going to do that with this telescoping gauge, and I got a micrometer that I can use to measure this size. Brand new Mitutoyo. Nothing quite like it. I'll measure this a few times, try to get a consistent reading, and then I'll compare it to the other one that I'm going to take off the machine. Using these telescoping gauges is a very subjective process. You got to get it just so. You just want there to be a little bit of drag on your way out. It's a very tricky process to get a consistent reading. Alright, seem to be getting pretty consistent readings with my method here. This isn't a perfectly smooth bore, so it's a little bit tricky, but 1.8165, somewhere around there. I'm getting anywhere from 1.8165 to 1.8167, so it's close enough. And it's the same in this direction and that direction. I checked in both ways. It's about almost exactly the same. I just got to take this one off. There's not much to it. It's just a bunch of Allen keys, and it's sealed on, but should be able to take it off relatively easily, even though it was kind of a pain to put on. Hopefully the new one will prevent the machine from locking up when I'm doing heavy cuts. There it goes. Okay, let's go see what we've got for a difference. Okay, here is the original one. You can definitely see it's been rubbing even more since the first time I had the problem. If you haven't seen that video of what happened before, check that out. It's about the spindle lockup and repair. I made an attempt, and it did work for a little while, but it's definitely still been touching. So it used to only have a small spot right here where it was touching before, where it had blocked up the spindle. Now it's has widened and gone to another area there. Same, 1.8125. So the diameter of the spindle, at least right here, 1.8083. So that means the difference between these two, this one has about 4 thousandths of clearance. That's 2 thousandths on each side. And this one has double that. It's 8 thousandths clearance, so 4 thousandths on each side. That's substantial difference. Yeah, 100% more. So that should, I'm hoping that fixes all the issues with the spindle. And I wonder if this rubbing was causing issues with the performance, trying to make heavier cuts. Because of that rubbing, it was taking up some of the horsepower. So I'll have to try some heavier cuts with this and see if it makes a difference. And of course now I got to clean up that spindle again, and the spot where it was touching, you can kind of see it. There's a spot here where you can see the metal was rubbing. So I've got this stone that I've gotten nice and flat on one side. I'm just going to run it across here until it sounds like it's nice and smooth. I'm just running the spindle, slow RPM. You can hear the difference up here where it's hitting the spot where there's galling, then down here where it's all smooth already. So when this sounds like that, I'll know that I'm all done. You got to be really careful when you're doing this. Anything with a spinning object. In fact, I shouldn't even be wearing gloves because they could get caught and stuck, and then it can tug and do some horrible things to you. Just using a little bit of WD-40 for coolant, lubricant. Alright, I think I got a little bit more to go, but it's almost there. There's a little bit of the silicone left on the spindle. Gotta make sure I get all that taken off. Alright, got my spindle nose closure all prepped. Got the silicone. They actually included a little tube of it. It's clear this time, but that was nice. And I'm just doing it the same way that I did before, a little bead around the outside. You see how well that worked out last time. Just leaves this nice little gasket looking thing around the edge. So same way. So one of the things I need to do, I need to have some shims ready. So I'm going to use some printer paper. This stuff has a thickness of 4 thousandths, or just under 4 thousandths. So with the clearance that I have, that I measured on here, that should be just perfect. So I'll put 3 of these around, relatively equally spaced while it's in, and hopefully I'll be able to slide those out in one piece, and that will make sure that the spindle is in the center of this nose closer. I did put this on the surface plate real quick just to make sure that there weren't any burrs sticking up, and cleaned that up there. Now I'm not tightening this down, just leaving it where it's still loose enough to move around a little bit. See if I can get my shims in place. Alright, so I'm going to gently tighten everything down and see if I can take out my shims after. Alright, so these are all still loose. I'm going to leave those in there while it dries. Just clean up this excess sealant. I'll let that dry, and then I'll try and machine something. Alright, that's all dry, so I can take these out. Spindle's good to go now. So when I had the other spindle closure on, I was making some of these drop-in T-slot nuts. And the way these work is when you have a bunch of equipment that's already bolted down and you want to put a T-slot nut in, normally you would have to go all the way in here, slide it in, and you'd have to take off everything that's in the way. But with these ones, you can just slide it into the slot straight from the top, and then when you start tightening it, it twists and then locks into place. So that works great for these guys. I want to make a couple more of these and see how the spindle does. I was definitely pushing it on some of the feeds and speeds. So here's the footage from before with the old spindle closer. So let's try to make a couple of these with the new one, see if I can push it a little harder. Alright, well that looks like it's working pretty good. It sounded about the same as it did the first time, so that's fine. At least I know that it wasn't really robbing me any horsepower. In this middle slot, I definitely almost stalled the spindle. So that was about as hard as you could push it, and it didn't lock up, so everything seems to be working alright. One thing that I noticed when the spindle was being loaded up really hard, you could hear the RPMs drop, but up here, this is just the setting of the RPM. It doesn't actually tell you what the current RPM is. It'd be nice to have a display of the actual RPM as well as the RPM setting. There are the T-nuts. They don't look half bad. Just a quick note on GoPro accessories and holders. This is an official GoPro clamshell, whatever you call this thing, and the coolant, this type of milky white coolant, I think it's the Qualichem 251C, it seems to break down this plastic. I've had this and the waterproof cover break in around the same time. You can definitely see it's starting to make it crack and get brittle. So I do think I'm going to switch coolant soon though. Having this problem with the tool changer, sometimes it does that and I get a error right there, ATC spindle brake failure, orient drifted, and the number is always different, but this time -18. I'm not sure what that's about. I called Tormach. They're gonna get back to me when they have a tech support person available, so we'll see what they say about that. All right, so I'm waiting on a call back from Tormach to help me out with this tool changer issue where it goes to the tray load position and then just goes back and gives me an error. I figure while I'm waiting on the call back from them, I want to switch coolants in the machine anyway, so it's probably a good time to do it since I can't really do any machining with the tool changer down. Or I could, but then it would be all manual. I don't want to do that. So it might be a good time to change coolants. I'm just going to clean out the machine. I'm not really going to show any of this stuff, just cleaning it out, flushing it, and cleaning out the sump, taking the coolant out, putting the new coolant, which is this stuff. This is Synergy 735. I've seen it a lot on other YouTube channels, or some of the big ones that are promoting it. I paid for this stuff. The reason that I want to use it is because you're supposed to be able to use it for carbon fiber as well as all different metals. So that's what I'm going to use it for, since I have a bunch of carbon fiber parts that I'm going to be machining coming up here pretty soon. And so I need to switch over anyway. I'm going to do that now. And hopefully when I come back I'll have a solution to the tool changer issue. Alright, so I've got the machine with the new coolant in it. I did a very thorough cleaning on this thing before I put it in there. I didn't want to have any problems with contamination, so I wiped down all the surfaces and rinsed everything out multiple times. Made sure everything was as clean as it could possibly be. And then put in the new coolant with deionized water at the right percentage. So there's the new stuff. Nice and clear. That's sort of a nice bonus that it's clear. That'll be easier to look at things after they've been machined. You'll be able to see right through the coolant instead of having to rinse it off or blow it off right away. It actually has kind of a pleasant smell. Yeah. I will let you guys know how this stuff works out. The only reviews that I've seen online are kind of mixed. You know, some people seem to think it's fine, and others have had problems with rust or other issues with the coolant, various things. The main issue that I would be able to report on is the corrosion, and so far I haven't seen any corrosion, even when I've let it dry and whatever residue is left. It doesn't seem to corrode any of the surfaces so far. Now that I got that in there and that's all sorted out, let's machine this Tombstone and get this finished up. The tool changer seems to be working fine right now, so we'll just carry on and see what happens. Maybe in the process of cleaning everything up, it took care of whatever it was. Alright, so all the CNC machining is done on the 4th axis Tombstone. That is looking pretty fine. Did a really accurate job with those tools. It left just this little sliver and it just like breaks right off. So it didn't touch the actual face of the adapter. That's just Great. So I'll have to break off those little burrs. The edge here is a little bit sharp, so I'm gonna just sand off that. And I've got to come back in and with a hand tap. I use this tap to start the threads, but I didn't go all the way down. I want to do that by hand just to make sure that I don't break any taps in here. I didn't want to risk that. So alright, well, I'm gonna have to go in and do all those. There's definitely a bunch of chips packed down into the bottom, so I'm gonna have to get in there and try to fish those out with, I don't know what you call it, but there's some little burrs. It's only on the two sides that were the third and fourth, the third and the fourth side. The first and the second are perfectly clean. So I think my tool started to get a little bit dull and left a little bit of an edge on some of these lines. So I'm gonna run it again, and also that'll allow me an opportunity to get the chips out from the tapping, and I'll just run the drill in there again, and that'll get the chips out of there. I won't run the tapping cycle again though. I'm just gonna run the final facing and the drill, and that's it. Now that this is all finished up, when I go to put my pallets on, I'll be using these shoulder bolts to hold them in place. Now, I was thinking these might be enough to locate it, but they're actually a little bit undersized from what you can get. Like this is a, you know, 1/4 inch, but it's actually like 247 or something like that. So you could have, with a fixture that you want to be repeatable, that could allow for some movement. So I'll have 2 of those, but I've got these other holes, so I can also put in a precision ground pin and use those 2 as the locating. I'll have to make these a little shorter, but yeah, that'll get me a repeatable pallet relocation every time. So that's it for this video. Thanks for joining me, and it took a long time to get here, but I'm finally done with the 4th axis mini Tombstone. I can get back to making knife parts. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of those videos, subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of stuff. And with that, time to get back to work. I'll see you on the next video.